Welcome to episode 21 of For Better or Best podcast. It's your girl. I know this voice is a little different. It's not Charles. He unfortunately could not make it today, but we have a very, very special guest, a friend of the pod, a good friend of mine, René Daniella, owned by Femme. If you follow me on Instagram, then you have seen her because this is who I'm taking trips with that Charles is always on the floor crying about. Welcome, René.
Thank you for having me. Sorry that Charles is not here.
I know. For everyone who's wondering, where's Charles? He is planning his festival. So
Huge.
We are headed to Nashville shortly, and he was just, he's been booked, busy, and he just doesn't have the bandwidth right now. But we still wanted to make sure that we got an episode out to you guys. And you guys are going to be upset. This is the final episode of the season.
Oh my gosh. It's the finale. It's the finale. Not the final, the finale for this season.
We will be back, hopefully. Last time we said September, and it was not September, y'all. So I'm not giving a date this time. We will be back shortly. We have a booked summer. We're hitting Essence. René, you'll be at Essence.
I will. I'll be pretty much most places that you guys will be.
She'll be traveling with us.
We're going to south of France.
Yes, we are doing a lot this summer. And then the second half of the summer, we're just going to chill out with the kids, do swimming lessons with CJ, and just do family stuff. So I'm excited for a little break, but I will say I'm so happy with how the pod turned out this season. And
phenomenal job.
Thank you. And it's just a body of work that I'm really excited about. So
absolutely.
René, we are going to chit chat today, have some girl talk.
Yes,
and,
I'm excited.
A large part of this pod is chatting with people who come from non-conventional backgrounds.
Sure.
And so what would you describe your job as? Because I know what I would describe your job as.
Well, give me yours. Give me yours.
So René is
I love to hear this.
She is a travel enthusiast.
Okay.
A lifestyle vlogger,
okay,
and an influencer.
That sums it up very well. I typically just say, if people ask what you do, I say I'm a content creator. I work in the influencer space because I generally think those are terms people are familiar with. And while I think some people do consider content creator or influencer, there's some negative connotations. They don't realize the amount of work that actually goes into it. And I also think that's some of their lack of, appreciation or respect for the career field is also because they don't understand how lucrative and how much it genuinely is an impactful space to be a part of. So I hope our conversation today can inspire others to see it a little differently.
I do too. And as someone who is, people say I'm a content creator, but I'm not to your scale. And when I see the work that you do and how much you put into it, when I hear people say oh, they just get paid to post videos, I'm like, the production value in the just post videos is next level. And I respect your craft so much. Even when we're out in our natural habitat, just having girl talk, and you pull out your phone, and I never feel like you're being the phone's out 24/7. I can't even talk to René without her shoving her camera in my face. And I feel like I see that comment so much on other creators. They're like, can your kids even enjoy a moment without a camera in their face? And I'm like, guys, we're seeing 30 seconds of their life of a 24-hour day. But I see you have a different eye for how you kind of take in life. And you're always looking for how can I capture this to share this with my followers in a meaningful and honestly beautiful way.
Thank you. Oh my God, I love that. Thanks, Shereen.
In a way that truthfully, I can't. I kind of, you always, René gets on me so much, and she's like, Shereen, you need to post more content. And I'm like, it's so easy for you. It's not as easy for me. So let's backtrack a little.
Okay.
I don't know, you graduated college, and
let's go to the beginning.
Yeah, how did we get to Owned by Femme and where we are today? Because obviously this is a newer career field for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in university. It was something I never really thought I was going to do. In my undergrad degree was in broadcast journalism, but my actual career field at the time was public relations. I was living in New York. I thought I was going to be in entertainment PR. I was so excited about that industry and loved it. And what happened is, being somebody, I'm half American, half British, having grown up traveling so much, my parents were also in the military. So any military brats out there, like, you guys will be well aware of what that journey is like growing up, traveling all the time. But it also inspired me to be really in love with travel and really prioritize it, even as a broke college student. So yes, I finished my undergrad and I was like, you know what, I enjoy public relations, but I'd love to do it on a global level. So I decided to go take my master's, and I picked a university in Paris, and I did my master's degree in like a global communication program, all with the intention of coming back to New York after, most likely, or London, somewhere else, big city, and I would just work in
and
PR
being a career
on a
girly.
I was thinking 9 to 5. I was already like enjoying the office aesthetic. My body cons, had to shift a little differently, give me more of the office appropriate attire. But yeah, so that's the mindset I had when I went into my master's program. But what ended up happening is, just before I left New York, I did a photo shoot, and I'll do my best to keep this brief because it can get wordy, but I did a photo shoot in New York, and I wasn't really comfortable in front of the camera at the time, but the gentleman who did my photo shoot, he was like, oh, I want to profile women who work, black women who work in entertainment and like work in, career fields, whatever. I was like, sure, okay, I'm an entry level, making no money in PR, but great, go ahead and profile me, appreciate it.
I'm a black woman in business.
So we did, I know, I'm like, who is this moonlighting as this black woman in business? But yeah, so he did my photo shoot. I arrive in Paris, I'm starting orientation, and these photos come out. It was I started in like end of January, or it was like a beginning of the year semester. So so these photos come out, and at the time on social media there was this natural hair movement, and today it still stands, but at that time it was very much more of this new shift.
What year was this? Like,
yeah, for context, this is 2012.
Okay,
I think it was 2012.
I feel like social media was like really on the rise then. Like, people were getting more serious about content, and it wasn't just like, post a picture of my breakfast.
No, at that time it still was pretty much like your everyday posting. Instagram didn't have like all the advanced editing options and like film options, and I don't think they had video at the time. Like it was just photos. But yeah, so he posted this photo. It got quite popular within the natural hair community, and so my audience at the time went from a few friends to now kind of a group of black women mainly who were really intrigued about my natural hair, my styles, my journey, what products am I using. So while I was in my master's program, and again, keep in mind I had a background in PR, I just kept creating content that I saw people were enjoying, which was content within the hair space. So my audience just kept growing. This is back in the day where hashtags really did kind of get the attention of specific pages, and they would repost you, and you would continue to engage with that audience.
Black hair pages were like a thing.
Oh, they were the holy grail. Oh my God, they were the holy grail. And to be on them, you just felt, oh my God, I'm a celebrity.
Yeah.
Like, wow, look at me on this page. Oh my goodness. And all the ladies. I mean, it was a beautiful space because there was so much encouragement. And even just when you think of the general concept around black hair and the politics there and negativity and the issues and the struggles that people have had, we're talking about this space that's helping alleviate that's helping people feel more confident, beautiful, more comfortable, changing industry standards. Like, it was a wonderful space to be a part of. So when I first started social media, I was like, oh, I love this, right? Like, as a girl's girl, like, I'm really connecting with women on a global level now, because some of the audience, I was living in Paris, but my audience was US. I had loads of French ladies. I had loads of girls from Brazil, because, in Brazil, they also have naturally curly hair, and you do have that same politics around it. So anyway, fast forward, it's a year and a half into my master's degree. I'm graduating, and I developed maybe, I can't really remember the numbers, but let's estimate around 20,000 followers, right?
Which was a lot.
Yeah, which at the time, especially as somebody who felt like, oh, this is just a fun little hobby. And it wasn't really until I kind of got to the end of my undergrad that I started to notice that there was ways to leverage. And it was a specific course in my university studies that required, if you had a blog, one, that you make a blog, and two, there was like a fashion focus. We were living in Paris, and she's like, if you've got a blog, leverage that to get access to Paris Fashion Week. So as somebody who had a PR background, I understood the idea of press, and like people needing publicity. So now I knew I was on the other side of it. I'm like, well, technically I'm a form of press, even though influencer wasn't a term, and social media itself didn't have the same weight that like YouTube or blogging, blog platforms. Instagram was a little bit different, right? Nobody really looked at it in that capacity, but at the same time, with the blog attached to it, you could kind of make an argument that this is great media. So yeah, so that was the start of me leveraging pitching and starting to reach out to brands. And mostly the idea was access, and then it was free product. I remember literally the first free product I got was a brush. Oh my God, I was so happy. I was living in Paris, but I went to London for an event, and I left my brush. And I was like, and if you're a curly girl, you know how much
you need a brush.
You need that good brush. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I tweeted this brand, and I was like, hey, it's Tangle Teaser. I was like, hey, Tangle Teaser. On Twitter, I was like, where can I possibly find your brush in Paris? I'm obsessed, and I've left it in England. And they were like, oh, here's some places. They responded, and they said, here's some places. But then they messaged me directly, and I think, my Instagram was connected to my Twitter, and they were like, hey, we'd actually love to send you a box. Like, yeah, we'd love to send you some brushes. And, me, broke college student, because I'm on my master's, but let's be clear, I was a broke college student.
Of course.
I'm like, oh my God, a like 10-pound brush for free or whatever. I'm like, absolutely. So I give them my address. They send me the brushes, and that like sparked that idea and awareness of like, oh my God, not only can I get access to things, but I can get free things. And so there it naturally grew. And so it did take a while before influencing, like the industry itself had developed, but I was, within that time frame, able to continue practicing and pitching and getting experience and continuing creating content. So even when you start out with skills where, you're not a photographer, videographer, any of those things, you really do develop a lot of that. Even the creative direction, even the habit that you speak of where you're like, oh, I'm just not in the habit of making content. It's not easy for me. Nothing is easy until you start, learning how to do it. So as soon as I finished my undergrad, fell more into the social media space, was trying to figure out how can I make money from it. So I moved to London with my best friend. We were literally doing it as cheap and cheerful as possible because both of us, one, we'd never lived in London.
Cheerful. Oh my gosh.
Cheap and cheerful.
I have to steal that.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's great. All yours, girl. We were doing it as cheap and cheerful as possible because what we really wanted was to experience London life, and we also wanted to travel around Europe. And if you're familiar with the fact that you can get the Ryanair flights like for super cheap, cheap as chips. So we were like, this is the plan. We literally rented a single room. Like, let's really get into it. We rented a single room in a 3-bedroom house where the living room was converted into a room. So it literally was.
So you and her were in the same
shared a room. And this is a friend that I've known since I was like 10. We were childhood friends, but both of us, but we made the sacrifice.
I think this matters because I think people probably see your life now.
Yeah, they glamorize.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And like, oh, you own a home and you travel and like people see all those things, but I always say, I'm like, no one wants to talk about like the struggle that there
you
was
start in,
before.
or that you cycle back into because struggles can reoccur. I'm like,
Absolutely.
I've seen them. We'll get into those, but I've seen them again. But at the time, and one of the notions that I loved once I got more successful, I always looked back at the struggles and I was like, I wouldn't even call them that because how fabulous. Like me and my best friend living in London, taking cheap weekend getaways to Copenhagen, and we all over the place.
It's like finding beauty in like where your life is right now, right? Like I look back on my 20s and it was like some of it was so much fun, like not going to fancy restaurants, but like going to the bar and having like finding happy hour and be like, this place has a great happy hour and it has food on it, so we can have dinner and have drinks all for $20.
Yes, exactly. Girl, $20. I'm like, I think you could do that for 10. We could bring that down. We can split stuff. But yes, we really appreciated the struggle of it.
Yeah.
We had a lot of humility in it. We had a lot of gratitude for just sheerly being able to enjoy those experiences and indulge in our travel dreams. We stayed at hostels on our trips. But with that idea, I was creating content around all of these activities. Yeah. So I went from doing natural hair and like Black women's beauty and fashion to more into travel, which to me was like, oh my God, that also opened a new horizon of like, oh, I can get discounts at places. And then, I can get free stays. I wasn't really getting a lot of money at the time. I was starting out with brands like Teamy. I don't know if you remember those tea companies back in the day. Yes. I think they might have been one of my first consistent paid brands, and it was $50 a post. So you know what I mean? Like I was not making a lot of money. And so I will say the mindset I went into my London life was I am going to live for free year, me and my best friend. The goal is to grow on social media, to start learning how to make money on social media, and to also do cheap and enjoyable travels around Europe with my bestie, right? And at the end of this year, if I'm not making money, then I will have patted myself on the back for giving it a whirl, and I will take myself right back to New York, and I will get back into the entry-level PR positions there in entertainment.
I never knew that you gave yourself a timeline.
Yeah, I gave myself 1 year, and I had got to the end of that year, maxed out a credit card, defaulted on my student loans. I had another credit card that had like pretty high balance, and then I owed my parents like $4,000. So I will say I was very blessed that my parents, I always knew in my mindset that there was never going to be a time in my life
you couldn't fall back
where
on
I
them.
was, where I was going to not be able to pay the rent, or I was going to be able to have food or anything. Like I could take the liberty of trying something new and something that's uncertain because I knew that I had a foundation of people who were never going to let me fall. So I will say that's something that I have a lot of gratitude for, and I understand that not everyone has that within their like resources, right? So I speak a lot of my success and I attribute it to the fact that my family believed in me, celebrated me, and also would never ever let me fall. So I got to the end of this year, I owed them money, I owed my credit cards, and my student loans.
MasterCard
was knocking on,
Visa.
Sally Mae was knocking on that door, and she was like, "Pay me." And so I was like, "Okay, great, I'm going to move back to New York." Me and my friends were doing a little going away parties, but there is a travel group that I also had joined, and it's called No Madness Travel Tribe. And within that group, there was a gentleman named Jabril, and he owns
Shout out Jabril.
Yeah, shout out Jabril. So he owns a travel media platform called Passport Heavy, and it primarily showcases on YouTube. And at the time, it was quite a bit smaller. But he was doing a phenomenal job. His primary source of income was Facebook marketing. Yeah. So he kind of had his like travel media Passport Heavy as a bit of his baby, as a bit of his like passion project. So him and his group lived in Colombia. They were doing videos profiling what life was like in Colombia, and he was like, "Hey, I'd love to have a female co-host. Would you be interested in taking over that position?" And there was like a monthly stipend. All the expenses were covered. Right. And mind you, the cost of living in Colombia is a lot more affordable, but still so much gratitude in my mind. I'm like, oh my God,
and you get to
like
live
the
in Colombia.
dream. I get to move to Colombia. I was living in London before that. I was in Paris. Before that, I was in New York. So I'm feeling like, oh my God, this is the answer.
It's coming together.
I'm looking at that $3,000 and like, like as somebody who was making a little $50 per post. I mean, guys, when I tell you I wasn't making more than like $1,200 a month, and I was covering all my expenses with that, and going on my little trips and stuff, like perpetrating the fraud, because now the credit card's maxed out, interest is rolling in, and I am owing all these things. So so I jumped at that opportunity, was so excited. So I moved to Colombia, spent 6 months there. In the meantime, mind you, by this point, I think I'm at like 60,000, 80,000 followers on Instagram. So we're still growing. We're still getting the occasional brand opportunity. It's a new space. You've really got to fight for any penny that you're getting from these brands. The year at this point is beginning of 2016. So I moved to Colombia, I think it was like February, March, sometime around then. Absolutely loved the experience. Spent 6 months working in this capacity as hosting, so I'm starting to get more comfortable on camera, getting more comfortable doing like travel tourism and travel media. And at the end of that 6 months, I'd accomplished paying off all my debts. I know my little $3,000. On top of my little $3,000 a month at the time, and not having expenses, I was also able to start getting more brand work because, lo and behold, the influencer industry had started to develop.
Bloom,
So by the time I'd left Colombia, influencer was a term, influencer marketing, there were budgets, influencer budgets. And while it was still on the newer end, brands were coming out, especially big brands. I was getting deals. I think one of the biggest ones I'd gotten within that time period was one with Caress, and they paid me $7,500, and they took me to the south of France. So they flew me from, I was like, oh, fancy girl. So they took me from the they took me from Colombia to the south of France. I spent like 5 days there, and what we were learning and experiencing was how they produced the fragrances that were going into the newest launch of like Caress body washes. So for me, I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. I met some really fabulous influencers that I'm still friends with from that trip. And like, we're talking 2016. So, one of the things I love about social media is it really connects people. Yeah. We can touch on that more later. So that was $7,500. So imagine I'm going from $50 to now I'm getting $7,500.
You have like dollar signs in your eyes.
I'm like touching, right. And I'm paying things off. I'm like throwing money at my parents. Like, here you go. Appreciate you.
You're like credit
a little
card
bonus.
Company. Stop
Yeah, exactly. I'm not defaulting on the student loans anymore. I'm paying them back.
I think that's amazing because you gave yourself a timeline.
I did.
You stuck to your timeline, and just as it was ending, you kind of got a big opportunity that you were like.
It was literally like a 2-3 week window from his email to when I would have been making my way back to New York.
So I love that you were like, I'm going to do everything I have to do in this timeline, do as much as I can. I'm going to kill myself, even if I have to max out my credit cards. I'm going to give it my best go in this 1 year that I've allotted myself. And I think so many people, it is like, obviously you were young, but it's hard to think about like taking that risk and like what does next look like. But I loved your approach of like, I'm gonna give myself a year and I'll lock in on it for this 1 year, and if I can't get it off the ground, like, let me go back to a tried and true 9 to 5 and I'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love how the universe has a way of bringing someone like a friend from your network and being like, hey, I got an opportunity for you that you weren't even like, hosting wasn't even something that you were on your radar.
Not fully. No, not fully. I mean, YouTube was always there in the background as a concept, but it wasn't something I had the capacity or the resources or a lot of knowledge around.
And it's like, you kind of got an opportunity, you jumped on it, and from there, that was like the thing that kind of changed.
Huge help.
So after Columbia, you were like, okay, I'm going to give this influencer.
Yeah, full-time girl, especially because those are the days that the curly hair industry really blossomed on social media by this point. So you were getting all the natural hair brands.
It was the tutorials on Instagram.
But just brands themselves were doing loads of integrations and loads of activations and experiences. So they're hiring you, flying you to different places so you can do photo shoots featuring their product. I was booked for a Dark and Lovely hair dye commercial. So now here's a girl who's never imagined in a million years that I would ever be a model, barely want to do that first photo shoot. And now I'm on a commercial. I'm doing voiceover work and cheesy little lines. And I was eating it up. I loved it. I was like, give me more. I want to see my name in lights. Loved all of it. But I will say there was always this blind faith. Again, I look back to the fact that my parents have always given me this strong foundation and just always a lot of sense of security. So I kind of feel like no matter what you do, trial and error, eventually there's going to be less errors and more success within it. So I always had that blind faith that I was going to achieve something within the realm of what I wanted to do. I just didn't always know exactly how or exactly what I wanted to do looked like fully. But I knew, I'm like, well, I really want to travel. I really want to work around. I want to network and be able to work with women and work with people. I really want to do something that like brings cultures together and that like allows me to experience the world, gives me a lot of lifestyle freedom. That was a word I loved, lifestyle freedom. I'm like, the freedom to do all these things. So it wasn't wealth in the terms of money, but it was wealth in the terms of freedom with your life. Yeah, time freedom and access to things that are like empowering and that bring you passion and joy. I'm like, whatever those things might be, which for me was really travel, travel and community, right? Those are my always on the two forefront of things that brought me so much fulfillment. And so that was just a huge contribution.
And you talk a lot about like your failures and your successes, and like when your success started to happen, it kind of like opened Pandora's box. But you've been influencing now for, let's say, like just over 10 years. Yeah. Were there times when maybe business was slow and like brands you were and you were pitching and like brands weren't answering as much, or like the deals were smaller, and like how do you battle like kind of like, I guess, that influx of money, right? Like
let me bring them up to speed. So the year was 2016 when I was in Colombia. 2017, I moved to LA like beginning of that year, and I was pursuing social media content creation full time. Again, the industry had really developed. Now there was loads more money. So fabulous, right? Really bringing in money that I could never have imagined, right? Yeah. I'm starting to make multi-six figures, and I'm like, oh my God. And when I was living in London, my friend, I think she got a job that was like £38,000 a year. And I remember thinking to myself, like daydreaming, like, can't imagine making one day money where I'll ever make such a massive amount, right? Like that is how little I was making at the time. So fast forward to 2017, now I'm bringing in six figures, and I've got more money than I know necessarily what to do with, because I'm also, one of the things that I love about social media is a lot of the things that I want to do are provided to me as experiences in exchange for what you're doing. So I'm not even spending a lot on my lifestyle. The clothes are getting sent to you, the beauty and hair care products, like the things that you would spend on were just so much more minimal. And mind you, of course, as somebody who indulges in some consumerism here and there, you find things to buy. But I just will say there's a lot of perks within the space. So that was 2017, 18, 19. 2019 was my best earning year at the time. Phenomenal. It was like, oh my God. It was to the point where I gave my parents, they were buying a new house and they were selling one, but the one hadn't sold, and they found one on the market they wanted to get. And you know how those go. Yeah. You got to put that down payment, all this and other. They were like, can we borrow, 100 and something thousand? I was like, take it.
You go, guys.
You let me know.
What a beautiful feeling,
whatever,
though.
Oh, it felt so good. I'm like watching that money go into their account, and guess what? I still had another six figures sitting in my account. Like, I wish I had any wealth management or like knowledge around wealth management, because I would have had that money in like investments and retirement funds and all sorts, but we won't go down that road. But anyway, yes, so I was having a lot of success. So 2019, then 2020 comes, and I moved to Europe or moved to England, and I was not making a lot of money as a lot of people were struggling.
I feel like that story is so relevant to this. So obviously 2019 was a great year for you.
Phenomenal year.
You were I think, was that the year I feel like that was the year
I think we met I feel like we might have met 2018. Yeah, we were pretty close friends by then.
I feel like by 2019, I like really remember you being a part of my life.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying like, hey, I'm going to give up my apartment for the year.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
2020 is my year to travel.
Like, I had an airline pass on Delta. I put, it was, my lease was coming up on February, like, 12th, and I was like, do I renew? Like, what do I want? What do I feel like? And I notoriously, due to my travel upbringing, every 3 years I get the itch and I want to move somewhere new. Yeah. So it was the 3-year mark. I'd been in LA 3 years, and I was like, why don't I travel? I got an airline pass. I was like, this is phenomenal. So I put my stuff in storage. I went to Europe for a friend's birthday. We went to the Swiss Alps. Phenomenal. Went to my parents' house. Was going to see them for like a couple weeks before going. I had an itinerary. I was going to Brazil.
I remember.
I was going to...
You were like, I'm traveling for at least 6 months, so I won't even need anywhere to stay.
At least.
And I was like, that's so smart. Give up your apartment.
Give up my apartment, and I would use the money I pay on rent, and I would use that for Airbnbs. I'm like, I was going to Brazil. I was going to Chile. I mean, I had things like music festivals lined up there that I wanted to go to. I had all sorts. And of course, 2020 happened, and so that was halted. I never left my parents' house. That was it.
I know. It was crazy. We saw Renee, and she was like, I'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I'll be back in LA for like 3 days, so we'll hang out. And then and then this is my itinerary. I didn't see Renee for another like 6-7 months.
Literally until November. So that was February. I didn't see you guys until November.
Yeah, I remember like us FaceTiming during the pandemic. I'm like, how are you doing? You're like, I'm bored.
Checking in on you. Yeah. I mean, I was running. I was losing weight, getting all the fitness. But during that time, I found that because my audience was very America-based, I was not having a lot of success getting UK brands to work with me. And so while I was living in London, I was trying, and I was not. Yeah, I was pitching endlessly. And what would happen is I would send analytics of my audience, like database, and brands would say, you're lovely, we'd love to work with you, but unfortunately, our audiences or our demographic that we're targeting is UK-based, and you'll have a primarily US audience. So they were very like, if you can get your demographics up to like 25-30% UK minimum, we could definitely bring you on. And like at the time I was like 3 or 4% UK. I was like, it's not happening. So I moved back to the US, and I was like, okay, let's get back into working here. It's 2021. I feel like brands were slowly coming back around. I had a couple of brands that were like loyal partners with me. So those really kept me afloat. I was making, I think one of my first biggest brand deals was like $75,000 with one single brand. And it was a hair brand. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, can't believe one brand is paying me, double what I ever thought I could make.
I remember you called me so excited.
Yeah, hugely excited. I mean, just my vision for the future was just so bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. So 2021 came about. 2022, I bought a house, January 2022. So that's,
Congratulations, a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal for me. I have a lot of gratitude being in the position to be able to do something like that as a single woman as well. Yeah. But to me, that's really a testament to the success that is available and that is capable, like somebody's capable of achieving within social media, because there is so much money within this space, and you really can curate and create audiences around anything that is important to you that you're passionate about. So a lot of my audience is Black women around natural hair, and it's also about Black people who love to travel, Black women who love to travel, women who love to travel, like anyone who can relate to me, and people in general who want to travel and looking for inspiration and insights. And then the general umbrella of things under lifestyle. Within social media, there really is kind of no limit. Social media is a space that pretty much majority of the brands that exist leverage, whether they're a service, whether they're a product. And so there's a lot of money. It's like a multi-billion-dollar industry. So yeah.
And I know in the beginning you said like, this is a career path that is sometimes not respected, right? But to your point, I think people are starting to realize like how lucrative it is, and we see so many people now like trying to get into content creation.
Yes, which I love.
I do. I love it too, because I think it helps people realize that there's so many people that are like them. I think life has a way of making us feel like, we're the only one who's like us. We're the only one that's weird. And I love to see people kind of showcasing their quirks on social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I feel like a lot of media is like perfect people, perfect bodies, perfect women. So I love to see the diversity of humans that social media brings to your doorstep.
Absolutely. It democratizes media in so many ways.
In so many ways. And we are watching so many people who don't necessarily have like a skill or a talent, but have a way of building community that, to me, is a skill and a talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get famous and build a brand on social media. And
absolutely, and provide for their families, start creating generational wealth. Like, there's so much that social media has become this tool for.
Yeah.
But if we dive a little into the struggles. So for me, 2022, I bought the house, which was a huge cash expense. So it was one of those things where I became a bit cash poor. But money at the time was still, I had these couple of big contracts I'd signed, so money was still coming in. 2023 came about, and I'd really exhausted a lot of my money on home decor projects, on renovations.
Y'all remember the episode 1 where we said we lost $40,000 with a contractor?
Yes, it's not cheap.
It is not cheap.
I know, and that makes me sick.
I was going to say, Renee and I were kind of decorating and like moving into our homes around the same time, and I remember the wallpaper incident where you called me pissed that the guy had installed.
Yes, a wallpaper installer. I mean, I literally had to take down all the wallpaper. Like, it was.
You were like, this wallpaper was so expensive. There's bubbles. It looks horrible. I was like, can we make it work? You were like, you cannot make it work. You can see that she was going off.
This example of how I sound is not representative, but okay.
You better be glad I didn't do an accent, because Charles would have done an accent.
To be honest, I think you tried a little bit, but it's neither here nor there. But it's expensive.
So you were kind of putting a lot of money into your house, which I can understand. We did the same thing when we bought our house. And I think, a house is a great investment, but it can drain a lot of your resources very quickly.
And, when you have a little vision and plan for what you're curating and creating within your space, I just kept assuming the money was going to keep coming. And I was keeping spending. And so here we are at the end of 2022, going into 2023. Money is not coming in as much. 2023 starts. I'm kind of getting some brand deals here and there, but like not the volume that I was getting before. But I had some things. So I started slowing down on the decor. I'd kind of finished a lot of the big projects. But I had some debt I was paying off and things like that. So as 2023 is carrying on, I'm getting really mindful about my expenses. Like, I'm using Rocket Money. If you don't know what that app is, love this app. It's called Rocket Money, and it basically tracks all your expenses and just your overall financial space like that you're in. So it'll track your assets, your debts, your investing. You can put all of that. You can connect it to all your different accounts. So I loved that because it helped me know when I was
Rocket Money said, slow down.
Yeah, Rocket Money said, girl, so you have 1,000 different subscriptions for streaming services that you don't use. Relax. You have all these editing platforms that you don't. I think I had like $100 and something for Canva. I wasn't using it. I had so many. I had like a teleprompter app, $150 a year. I had, like, when I tell you, I had so many things I was paying for. I wouldn't even go down that route, but all I know is it was loads. So yeah, highly recommend Rocket Money for anybody who feels like they want to get more of a handle on their expenses.
Rocket Money, sponsor us, thanks.
I know, honestly, we would like the coins. But yeah, so I started just getting really fiscally responsible and mindful. But by the end of 2023, I had gotten to this place where I had pretty much a countdown for myself of when I was going to run out of cash based on my overhead expenses. So I had depleted. I had no more savings. I was maxing out my Amex. Like, I think from middle of 2023, my Amex was having a rolling balance. And prior to that, I was very proud of always paying that Amex off because, you don't want that interest charge. So now I've got this 10 to 15 to 20K balance that's rolling, and I'm paying minimums. I'm paying 5K here, 3K here. But that interest alone, I spent a couple of grand just on interest. And so 2024, I think I calculated until like the end of March. That would be the last time that I would have, with the money that I knew was coming in, that I would have any money to pay these bills. And I was like, oh my God. Like, the sweat beads were forming. Like, I'm the only person responsible for my house. And we're at a point where this overhead is way too high for me to lean on my mom or ask anyone to help me with. So I had to get really creative. And also in 2023, another thing is I had done my little weight loss journey. I lost about 40 pounds.
You did.
I know, thank you.
You look
so
great.
I appreciate that. So I was on my own kind of like self-development journey. And one thing about the social media space space is it's very visual. And so if you're not comfortable in front of the camera because of whatever reason that is making you feel discouraged, that is going to contribute to your ability to create content, for your ability to be passionate about this space, for you to crank out the volume and consistency that you need. So that probably also contributed to the fact that I wasn't getting booked as much. And I think most people can agree that 2023 in general, people were getting laid off, like brands and businesses and companies were just behaving very differently. They were a lot tighter in general. So I know I don't speak alone for that, because by 2024, I've got several friends who are, pulling their hair out and trying to figure out, do I go back from social media into the 9-to-5 industry? Yep. Do I supplement it with some other things? All the above. They're moving out of LA to somewhere a bit more affordable, all of those options. So I was a part of that crew. So 2024 comes around. I've lost weight. I feel a bit more confident, a bit more comfortable in front of the camera. I'm getting a lot of recognition for my home. So I'm
cranking out the content.
Cranking out content. So I'm going from having a really struggle year, late 2022 to 2023, not performing the way I thought it would. So also starting to second guess. I think I even asked you guys, like, could I get a job?
I know. When they was
calling us for real job?
Career advice, I was like, why are we talking about you? Why are we working on a resume?
I was considering it. But so I will say there was a few variables that contributed to the struggle. But 2024 came about. We can go in December of 2023. I put this whole list together because I had my countdown. I was like, oh, if you don't make some more money by this date, and if you're an entrepreneur, the net 30s, net 60s, like even if I got some contracts signed, like I will not get coins until
2 months later.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh. So I got on my keyboard, I made a list, and I started pitching like crazy to a bunch of different brands, getting on the radar, reaching out to agencies. So really for anybody who was like, oh, I kind of want to get into social media, like, what can I do? How can I get more work? Or anyone who might be struggling within the space and finding that they don't have as many brand deals. I stand behind the idea that you can take it into your own control and you can take that initiative and pitch on your own behalf, put your own concepts and ideas together. And if you don't frequently do that, sit and look at the content that inspires you or the content that you relate to most, or content that you feel passionate about, and just start creating ideas around what you would feel comfortable or confident making in terms of content, and just start creating it. And one, you put that content out and brands will come. And two, you can then take that content you've created and you can leverage it and you can pitch brands. So when brands are not knocking on your door, you can go knock on theirs. So that's what I did. I spent pretty much late November, all of December pitching into all of January, because again, March. By the end of March, by April 1st, rent will still be due, mortgage will still be due.
TikTok.
Who's doing it, right? And so I will say I started having some success as brands started getting back to me. It was more around the late January stage. Everyone's back in the office. I think a lot of brands are kind of figuring out, like, what am I going to do? What are we doing with our budgets this year? Yep. What are our key projects that we want to start launching? Who are the ambassadors that we want to be working with? So I had some repeat clients, which, we're a testament to having done good, consistent work with them in relationship building and maintaining. But then additionally, I was reaching out to these other brands. And so what I found is that brands who, were in a position of needing influencers or needing talent, some of them received that email and those pictures, and they were like, you know what? Oh my God, you'd be great for this. We're actually working on this project. Would you be interested? And so now, I had released a post, and I know that's one that you wanted to reference, but I posted on social media. Like, imagine I'm going from rolling 20K debt on my Amex and not knowing if I'm paying my mortgage past the end of March to by the end of March, January, I'm like, that's spring. Yeah, by the end of March, I had signed. And this is signed in contract, so did not receive money in my pocket yet, but signed in contract, $250,000.
Come on.
I know! Back in the game.
We're back
in the game. So I know, I just need you to think,
no more happy hour for you. You can order off the regular menu.
Bring me the oysters, honey. Bring me the lobster. So yes, I had just a full 180. I felt, I'd lost the weight. I was now making the money. I was in a position where I did not have to stress. And if anyone, I know a lot of people can probably relate to the idea of when you are in financial stress, that is a cloud that's over absolute everything you're doing.
Cannot focus.
And I know people talk a little bit. I don't know enough, but I feel like I have to deep dive one of these days about cortisol in your body and the stress hormones and things like that.
Holding on to
contributing to other ailments, whether it is weight gain or other sickness that people experience, because you are kind of in this toxic and like desperate space, and it really taxes your mind. I mean, it reduces your creativity and productivity, and you're not getting sleep. Like, it really affects so many things. So for me, it was just this huge relief. And like, even now, I mean, like, what are we in? We're in June. I've only gotten some of these checks that I've signed over, you know, the last few months. And I was just telling you, I've paid off some tax that I had. I paid off my credit card. Like, I have finally gotten ahead of some other things that were, you know, these little clouds. But obviously, once I'd signed those contracts, I had a lot more faith, a lot more comfort in knowing this money was coming. But it's only now, like today almost. Like, literally, one of my last tax payments came out this morning. And it's been such a game changer. So, like, I just want to emphasize for anybody who is thinking about the social media space and thinking of ways that you might leverage it as an entrepreneur, whether you are yourself talent or whether you want to leverage social media to help promote your brand and bring in clients for whatever service or products that you sell. Like, social media really is a tool, and there's absolutely no reason, even with the algorithm changes and even with the limitations that, you know, the platform itself might put on your capacity to reach the people and things, there is still no reason why you can't leverage it to some degree. And I do agree, and I understand, and I respect the idea that it does take a certain type of energy. Yeah. It takes a certain type of muscle that you're going to be exercising. Like, do you want to get in front of the camera? Do you want to speak to people? Do you want your business out there? Do you want people nosy?
You have to practice it.
Yeah, you practice it and you get comfortable with it and you set boundaries. Like, I appreciate you saying earlier that, I'm not really, you know, you notice me as somebody who works in this space, that I'm not always out with my phone. I'm not always engaged in that way. And that is because I've got what I consider to be a really healthy relationship with my social media usage, with the way that I run my platform as a brand versus, or, you know, as a personality versus how I use it in a day-to-day life. And I love putting my phone away and being able to engage. And even as a content creator, you know me, I'll grab content that I think I need to feature something, and then I put my phone away and I go back to enjoying in the moment. Yeah. And that's why you see me posting 4 or 5 days late, a week late.
Y'all, I can't. Renee,
we tagging Shereen like, we had the best time, and Shereen's like, that was from 2 weeks ago.
Renee is my friend, and she has a heavy travel schedule. So sometimes it's very hard to keep up with, like, where she is and what she's doing next. We're also psycho friends that track each other. And
we do have each other's locations.
We have each other's locations.
Which is necessary. It's
so helpful. Sometimes I will just check her location. Like, I don't remember where she said she was going, and let me just check in and make sure my friend's okay. But she does not post in real time. And I do think that's how you stay in the moment sometimes, right? Like,
it's partly how I stay in the moment. It also allows me to curate content, to be able to tell stories in a way that I, you know, represents the way I want to convey that. And then it's also slightly for safety, right? Like, if you're posting the hotel or the restaurant you're in, I don't find myself that I'm in a position where I do have anybody within my audience who has ill intentions for me. But the reality is, it doesn't matter how small of content creator you are, how big of a personality you are, you can't really control the actions of others, and taking certain safety measures, to me, is absolutely worth it. So that's another contributing factor to posting a little delayed.
I think that all makes sense. Renee, you were amazing today. I think you have, honestly, I thank you for your candidness and your honesty. I think social media is most people's highlight reels, right? Like, we see the good. People very rarely talk about, like, the struggles of this job and the struggles of, like, making the money and signing the big deals. Like, we just see the big deal. You post, like, oh my gosh, guys, I just signed a huge deal. But no one talks about the failed, 10, 20 deals before that. Or
the feeling you might lose your house.
So I appreciate your candidness and your honesty. I do think that people are probably like, well, let me start pitching brands and stop waiting for brands to come to me. Let me start creating the content. So I appreciate you so much. Guys, we are taking a pause. So this is the last time you'll hear my voice in a while, but I'm so excited. We have some great guests in mind for season 3. That's it. We will see you in the fall for Better or Best.
Yay. Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.